Just want to welcome you all to the Amplitude Ventures Fellowship Program information session, which is hosted by Stem Cell Network. This is going to be an opportunity for you to interact with our two speakers from Amplitude, and you can ask questions at any point during the webinar using the Q&A function. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with how to operate that. Those questions will be addressed at the end of the session by our two speakers. And to begin with, I'm going to start by introducing Kate Murray. Kate is the Executive Director of the Stem Cell Network, and she will now say a few words of welcome before the information session begins. Thank you, Kate.
So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. And thanks for joining us and our friends at Amplitude for this webinar. Just before we get going, I just acknowledge that I'm here in Ottawa and I'm situated on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So today we are thrilled to be able to partner with Amplitude Ventures and share with you, our community, their program, their fellowship program, which has a strong entrepreneurial focus. So for those of you who might want to put your toes into the entrepreneurial world in the months and years to come, this is an excellent opportunity for you to learn what it is to work in a life sciences industry through this fellowship program. And I'd really like to commend Amplitude for putting this fellowship program together. I think what a great way to grow Canada's talent and strength in this space. So well done, congratulations folks at Amplitude. As well, some of you may know that the Stem Cell Network has a very strong training mandate. Over our 20 years, we have supported 4,000 plus in training endeavors, whether that's around technical skills for working in a lab or on career skills or project management skills. But one of the areas that we continue to try to focus on is around commercialization and industry skills and how to develop career paths into this space. So when Amplitude called and asked if we would partner up with them on this webinar, we said yes, of course, because this fits in very nicely with our mandate. And we wanted to make sure that our trainees had an opportunity to hear more about it. And over the next 3 years, as many of you know, Stem Cell Network will be launching a new strategic plan. It'll come out this April. And by the end of that strategic planning period, we'll have supported an additional 1,500 people. So I hope you'll keep an eye on our website, on our social media platforms, and of course our newsletter about some of the training opportunities we'll have for you. Not just workshops and courses, but there's fellowships, there's internships, there's international lab exchanges, and of course, we're always pleased to be able to support international travel awards for you to be attending scientific conferences, etc. So let me turn it over to our friends at Amplitude and let Michael, me and his colleague Anish share with you their program. You're here to really hear from them and ask your questions to them. So I'll be quiet now, and Michael, floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate, John, and the Stem Cell Network for hosting us today and providing us an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about the Amplitude Ventures Fellowship Program. Really excited to share this program with all of you, and thank you all for your interest in joining today. Before diving in, thought I'd spend a couple moments just introducing myself so you know who you're hearing from here today. But as Kate mentioned, Mike Me, I'm a principal on the investment team here at Amplitude, and I came to my role here at Amplitude probably from a similar path to all of you who are attending, assuming a lot of you are trainees. I did my PhD in biomedical engineering. I did that work down in Boston. And I was really captivated by the dynamic life science entrepreneurial ecosystem down there. I got bit by the entrepreneur's bug during my time doing my PhD, and launched a company along with a postdoc looking to translate our work into the domain of animal health in sort of livestock context with the microbiome technology we're developing, and learned a huge amount of about that entrepreneurial journey. And like many academics, what I learned the most was I had a hammer and I was looking for a nail. And when I found a great nail, I realized that maybe it wasn't the best hammer to be hitting that nail. And I benefited a lot from having the opportunity to go through a fellowship program like this that really catalyzed the launch of my career and made me reflect deeply on how to iterate between sort of technology that could be really beneficial to humankind and the sort of clinical applications of that, and pairing those technologies really nicely. And again, one of the goals that we have here. But yeah, so both Anish and myself have really benefited from these early stage fellowship programs to catalyze our careers in the life sciences. And hopefully this can be a really interesting fit for all of you as well. So the fellowship program, our goals are really to inspire and educate the next generation of life science entrepreneurs by introducing them to the company creation process that we drive here at Amplitude, to really sort of frame the type of aspirational vision and strategy that is required to build a world-class life science company, and doing so in areas where are a little outside of your scientific domain. So we're going to be exposing individuals to a lot of diverse areas, having you work dynamically in teams to think about and expose you to this company creation process and new areas of biology. So without further ado, let's dive in and tell you a little bit more about the program. Through the session today, going to tell you a little bit about the company creation process at Amplitude, what a day in the life of exploring with us here at Amplitude looks like, and what the cycle of the summer fellowship looks like, some of the details on the programs in terms of the benefits and how to apply, and then finally close off by telling you a little bit about the individuals who came through the program last year and the types of diverse skill sets that they brought to the table and represented in terms of the types of individuals we're looking for the fellowship program, but then also where that led to in the trajectories that enabled for their careers down the line. So let's dive in and tell you a little bit more about the company creation process that we drive here at Amplitude. So the fellowship program will be focused on the first phase of a 3-part process that we run at Amplitude for company creation. So we're going to be focused on the exploration phase, but this phase is really focused on ideation, diving into new areas of biology and coming up with a view on new areas of white space and strategies and ventures that can emerge. But ideas that come out of that and evolve from the exploration phase go into our refinement phase, which could be anywhere from 3 to 9 months of additional work, where we continue to robustly develop the plans, understand what types of, and plan the experiments, plan what type of team we need to bring around the table, and do all that planning, and then ultimately launch these companies for those that make it all the way through this evolutionary selection process with initial seed financing to critically probe the feasibility and scope of opportunity of these novel ventures. And so we'll seed these concepts with anywhere from $1 to $5 million to really move these forward to build out these platform visions so that we can catalyze the next phase of their growth. So the fellowship program focused on this exploration phase, but will give you exposure to the entire process. But the exploration is focused on this evolutionary company creation process. So the Amplitude team has spent the last few months and has continued to work on this, but has identified about 15 topics that we'll use to seed these explorations. So these are topics that we've started to identify, understand that they're new emerging insights in areas of biology or insights that can potentially be challenging the dogma in a certain discipline and domain, things that we think are really fruitful to start to dig in on and explore around. So these topics will be assigned to the teams of fellows that will work alongside Amplitude to dive into these topics and start to seek out white space concepts. White space we talk about as something that is a totally novel area and fairly vast. Areas where there isn't much competition in terms of other companies, areas where there's no sort of competing intellectual property, and sort of really a broad new area that is at the fringe and sort of at the outer limits of technological capabilities today. We dive into these by asking really ambitious and thought-provoking what-if questions, right? So we're trained in sciences to often identify why things aren't working and what will kill them. We try to flip that mindset and really drive this aspirational what if, and we'll figure out how to prove it and how to technologically probe these questions. But we need to start with these what if questions to start to seek out these areas of opportunity. So what if questions could be, if you think back a decade, things along the lines of, what if an immune cell from our own body could be a therapy, right? So things that are very tightly linked to the stem cell network. These aren't things that we'll actually be doing. These are a little older, but things along the lines of, what if circular mRNA could be a new therapeutic modality? What sort of benefits would it have over linear mRNA? And how could we take advantage of those unique pharmacological properties of something that is circular versus linear? What if we could use tRNAs as a therapy? So all these types of sort of probing questions. We use these to then develop venture hypotheses that are very concrete to outline the scope of opportunity and the current feasibility of the science. And we'll go into a little more detail on these in a second, but these will be orthogonal and really span and try to cover the landscape of and describe what this white space actually is. Ultimately, the venture hypotheses that we develop, similar to how we develop hypotheses in the scientific domain, will be tested, evolved, recombined, and ultimately those that are most promising and make it through this evolutionary process will be presented at the end of each exploration cycle. And those that are most prominent and sort of selected at the end of the summer will go on through that refinement and launch phase within Amplitude's company creation model. One of the things that we're really excited about is also the ability to continue to work with fellows that work with us over the summer on the exploration phase, but to bring them within Amplitude to continue to work on these company creation efforts internally at Amplitude as well. So to say a little bit more about a day in the life of exploring and this exploration process, what exactly are we doing in developing these venture hypotheses? So again, the goal is to develop an aspirational vision for what type of life science sort of impactful, game-changing therapeutic platform could emerge from these types of innovations. And this starts really with telling a compelling story. And that's about these what if questions that really start to captivate the imagination, take a fresh perspective on the emerging science, but ultimately also make the world a better place. And as I mentioned, there are two major elements that we try to articulate with these venture hypotheses that we develop through the exploration phase. First, on assessing the scale and significance of the opportunity that motivates investment in this novel technology and development of a novel technology. The second is being concrete enough that we can actually measure the feasibility of the science. So it's not enough to have a hypothesis of saying, use a cell as a therapeutic. That is very vague, but we want to be very precise of how we're going to engineer that cell, what therapeutic application are we going to use for it, how we're going to deliver it to the patient, all ingrained in the venture hypothesis of what we're articulating. So let me go into a little more detail, but in terms of the significance of the opportunity, we try to think about how does the platform address multiple unmet needs, so many different diseases, and not just one therapeutic indication, but actually can address many, many different areas of medicine. We use monetary terms to talk about the impact that it will have on the patient landscape, but we sort of look to see that these underlying foundations of these platforms could attain $1 billion valuation and sort of really have that significant impact. Largely, these will be first-in-class product types and use innovations that are protectable. And we'll look to articulate again that these technologies can impact dozens of different diseases and many different therapeutic areas, but we want to be pretty specific and concrete with one therapeutic application area to really think all the way through to a doctor giving a patient a novel therapy like this, to understand everything from technology development, early stage de-risking, all the way through clinical application and what maybe even a clinical trial could look like in that indication. This might not be the first disease that we start to develop clinically in, and it likely won't be. But again, it's something that we use as a tool in developing these venture hypotheses to understand how to use these new technologies as a medicine. The second element that I was discussing is the feasibility of de-risking. So how concrete, how knowable is and executable are the scientific experiments we need to do to prove out whether or not this technology can be developed. So what we'll try to understand is, are we leveraging the acceleration of science in a given area, whether it's a new measurement technique or new developments of computational algorithms, et cetera. So think back to the days of the emergence of the microbiome or the emergence of CRISPR, and how that growth and sort of development of the science there really enabled many different novel therapeutic technologies to emerge. We'll want to be seeking out and understanding, can we identify the visionaries in this domain that we can bring on potentially as scientific co-founders to the effort that we're looking at. We want to be able to use fast prototyping and experimental iteration to really accelerate the development of the science within the company that we'd be launching, and really tap into leading computational approaches and ability to leverage all that data. And ultimately, because we're so into the future and sort of thinking about how do we change science fiction into just science, not all of these concepts will be feasible today. And that's totally fine. That's sort of the domain and area we want to be in. But if it isn't feasible today, we want to be pretty specific about why not, and how and when will it be feasible, right? So one example I like to use is, for example, if the technology platform that we're articulating is really reliant on, for example, DNA synthesis for genes, is there some capability threshold either around the cost of that synthesis as it relates to the platform we're developing, or the size and length of the DNA constructs that we need to generate that would be gating on enabling us to do this? And that could be the key unlock to enabling this entire venture hypothesis. But we want to be very specific about, again, that how and when could we enable this. So for each exploration, dozens of venture hypotheses will emerge that will be evolved, recombined, and selected through this evolutionary process. In terms of the cadence of the month-long exploration cycle, we'll start from initial concept, and in the first week, we'll spend a lot of time diving into scientific literature to develop a framework for the strategic exploration, working hand in hand with the team and the individuals at Amplitude that you're working with on those explorations to understand which directions to take this and map that out. We'll very quickly start to propose venture hypotheses with uncomfortably little information in our heads, but really starting to be specific and understanding how we need to identify the data to prove or disprove, rule in or out some of these venture hypotheses in terms of feasibility. And so we'll test these venture hypotheses through conversations with key opinion leaders, prominent researchers from around the world, and our network of founders, advisors, and executives across our portfolio companies as well, to weigh in and start to select some of these concepts. So fellows will interact daily with the Amplitude team to go on to refine and identify areas for further development and start to select these as well. And ultimately, the exploration framework and the most promising hypotheses will be presented back to the Amplitude partnership and network of advisors at the end of each exploration cycle, at the end of each month. And so this towards the end of that month, there's a lot of time spent on thinking about how do you succinctly articulate this complex science and these complex ideas in a very succinct way and a strategic way, and developing that presentation capability. This is a really important skill set for entrepreneurs, to capture the vision, capture the strategy, and articulate. And that we're spending a lot of time helping to train the fellows on how to accomplish that. So moving on, saying a little bit more about what the program looks like, have a bit of a diagram here of how it leads to the launch of a number of concepts. But this will be a 3-month virtual program. We made the decision at the end of last year to run this once again virtually. We have a lot of digital infrastructure that we provide to enable things like brainstorming, whiteboarding, and it's worked quite well. The tentative start and end dates for this program are from May 30th, 2022 to August 31st, so those 3 months of the summer. As I've been highlighting, each month is one exploration cycle, so really a quick sprint to dive in and develop venture hypotheses. And we'll start to, towards the end of the summer, further refine these ideas and start to introduce you to that refinement stage of what it takes to robustly build out the tactical plan of building these. So each month ends in that presentation and synopsis of the exploration to the fellowship team and our network of advisors. It's highly collaborative work. The fellows will be working in teams of 2 or 3 fellows. on a sort of full-time daily basis, working very closely together. And in partnership with the Amplitude team. Generally, there are 2 or 3 members of the Amplitude team paired with each team of fellows to drive this exploration forward. You can think of the breakdown of work not only across the month, but just in sort of general time allocation. About a third of the work is independent, sort of diving, contemplating the science, thinking about the science, developing those hypotheses independently. About a third of the work is in collaborative meetings, either with KOLs, external KOLs, or with your teammates. And then a third in sort of presenting and developing materials to articulate the science as well. So generally, the cadence of the summer is that we'll start off with an introductory cycle. The first month is getting our feet wet, understanding the destination we're driving towards a little bit better. And then in the second and third months, in July and August, we'll be exposing each team to 2 exploration topics to expand the sort of biology and sort of novelty that you're interacting with. Each month, we'll be switching up the teams, getting an opportunity to work with everyone around the table. And beyond just this experiential learning, throughout the summer of building these frameworks and diving into the science and thinking about this entrepreneurial path, we're going to punctuate the summer with a number of seminars as well to expose the fellows to critical elements of understanding that entrepreneurial journey and what it takes to build these early stage life science portfolio platform companies. So some examples of these include, for example, sessions on platform intellectual strategy, platform intellectual property strategy, I should say. So beyond just what does it mean to file a patent, but more thinking of, if this is a foundational technology to build a company upon, how do we need to think strategically about our whole portfolio of IP that the company develops, and how there'll be foundational patents where many more specific patents will be filed on top of that, and what that entire intellectual property journey looks like for these early stage companies. We'll bring around the table a number of founding CEOs and founders to talk about that company creation journey and the launch of their companies. Furthermore, we'll bring around the table other biotech executives to really start to illustrate what different paths in biotech can look like. So what does it mean to be a chief operating officer versus a chief scientific officer versus a chief executive officer? Philosophically, we believe that entrepreneurialism and leadership is critical at every level and every position in these emerging companies. And thinking about what path and what trajectory is right for you is going to be a part of the summer's journey. And lastly, and not to be diminished in importance, probably one of the more important elements is actually the network that will be formed between all the fellows. And we'll host a number of social events throughout the summer. Some of those will be virtual, some of them will be in person, sort of COVID context depending. But looking to really form those strong bonds. We believe, and Anish and myself have had this experience going through fellowship programs like this, where the individuals that you connect with and network you make at sort of in programs like this, these are going to be some of the leaders of the industry in the coming decade. And it's going to be a really rich network for you to sort of tap into as you continue to develop your career. We'll be looking to expose you and introduce you to last year's fellowship class, and moving forward in the coming years, sort of continue the growth of that Amplitude Fellowship alumni network as well. That'll be really useful for everyone to meet. So in terms of some of the details, I already mentioned the general time period from end of May to end of August. This is a paid fellowship. This is a quarter of the year, so think of this as a quarter of an annual postdoctoral salary. Highlighted that this will be run virtually. The benefits, again, are sort of building that network with industry, with Amplitude, with our network of founders, with the fellows themselves, really exploring the cutting edge of areas of science, and exposing you to areas of innovation outside of your PhD or postdoctoral training. We like to place fellows just outside of their expertise. We think that sort of changing topics, changing domains is a way to challenge assumptions, challenge the dogma in given domains, and really drives that creative thinking. And critically, it's a great way to take your skill sets that you've developed as scientists, as trainees in the life sciences, and thinking about how to ideate concepts, identify de-risking plans for novel technologies, and think about the early stage strategy for these companies. You'll be I'm sure sort of surprised going through a program like this how much you've learned through your PhD to think and sort of expand these strategic elements. So because this is so deep in the science, some of the requirements that we have for the program are really to have a deep scientific background aimed at the life sciences. And this can be wet or dry lab, so computational as well. But really diving into those biological understandings. So generally this will be ongoing or completed MD training, PhDs, MBAs or postdocs with this research focused on the life sciences or healthcare. A must is proven academic excellence as a baseline, but furthermore, we're really looking for this evidence of entrepreneurial self-starter mentality, of individuals that have the creativity and ability to solve complex scientific and business problems and lateral thinking. Furthermore, because this is a paid program and us being a Canadian corporation, we require Canadian work authorization. Given the network that we're speaking to right now, that will likely apply, but that's generally Canadians potentially training outside of Canada, or anyone that has come to Canada to do their training with that work authorization. And also because of the desired destination of working hand in hand to continue to build these companies, we'd ideally like to see you be within 1 year of completion of your training or ready for that transition from academia into industry within that year timeframe. So briefly, in terms of the application process, all the details are online, but please send your resume and a cover letter to fellowship@amplitudevc.com. We're accepting 6 to 8 candidates for this year's program. The applications are due by the end of March 30th. And be sure to highlight in that application, in your resume materials and cover letter, why you're motivated to participate. What is it about a program like this that gets you excited about translation of science? Why are you inspired to develop as a life science entrepreneur? To provide a quick snapshot into what the application process looks like, and we'll be running this pretty quickly in early April after receiving all the applications. We'll be going through 2 rounds of interviews. The first being 30-minute phone calls with selected candidates from the applicant pool, and then moving the final sort of selected candidates through a 1-hour mock exploration process, really doing what we'd be doing over the summer, but on a bit of an accelerated manner. So to provide a quick snapshot of the diversity of backgrounds that came around the table for last year's fellowship program, just thought I'd show a quick snapshot of last year's cohort. So we had 6 individuals around the table last summer, coming from backgrounds as diverse as trainees doing their PhDs in chemical engineering, looking at advanced drug delivery polymers, to AI computer scientists looking at diverse blood biomarker data sets. And sort of teasing out signals from those types of data sets. We had molecular biologists and biochemists looking at organelle biochemistry, immunologists looking at sort of receptor signaling or sort of cell differentiation, some very close to the stem cell network already. And individuals doing things like high throughput genomics, functional genomic screens, and developing microfluidic assays to do those in a very nuanced way. So again, a really dynamic summer. Everyone had a great time. Everyone grew very close over the summer. A number of fellows went off and did weekend biking trips and things of that nature, and continue to remain in touch. Furthermore, it led to a number of interesting opportunities for their career paths. So some of the individuals that went through the program ended up in positions, strategic business development roles at groups like the Center for Commercialization of Regenerative Medicine. One of the fellows has taken on a strategic leadership role at one of our portfolio companies, and we look to introduce you to all those companies as appropriate and as you're interested in. But one of them took a role at Deep Genomics. A couple of them have ended up in early stage, seed stage investment funds focused on the life sciences and bio. One here in Canada, one in Silicon Valley, a group called 50 Years. And then additionally, one has sort of stepped in and continues to work with us here at Amplitude to think about that next chapter of company creation, moving concepts through that refinement stage and driving that company creation process within Amplitude. So I think that more or less covers a lot of what I was hoping to go through today, more or less at that sort of 25-minute mark. But happy to address any questions you have on the program. And I'll just highlight as well that happy to answer questions offline if as soon as we get off this Zoom link, you realize that some of the questions you had weren't addressed or new questions crop up, we can handle a lot of those by email offline as well. But Anish, are there any questions in the Q&A or the chat box?
Yeah, just a couple, not too many. And guys, a reminder, if you have any, please feel free to enter them. One of them, the first one, actually, I think you probably already addressed, but I'll ask it and see if you have anything else to add, which is, what has been the career trajectory of previous fellowship alumni?
So pretty diverse. Sort of highlighted a number of those just then in terms of going on to work in some of these organizations within our portfolio companies, in business development and strategy roles, in investing roles at seed stage funds, and being entrepreneurs, whether that's internal to Amplitude or continuing to do their own entrepreneurial vision is sort of great opportunities. We expect that some fellows may go back to academia and continue on the academic path and use the training from this experience to maybe think a little bit differently about how they approach identifying topics and things they want to work on in their own labs. So a lot of different dialogues, but at the end of the day, sort of once you are part of the Amplitude Alumni Network, you're part of an extended Amplitude family as well, and we're here to help you on that path, provide counsel and mentorship along your career journey as well.
Okay, great. And then the other question we had was, for applications, are recommendation letters allowed?
Absolutely. You own your application. We'll look at whatever you send us. I'd say sort of it's great to hear that people that you've been working with are going to be recommending you. That carries a good amount of weight in sort of looking at the application package that you're sending us. I'd say when you think about the application materials, and this is true of any role that you're applying to, but try to make sure you tailor it to the role that you're applying to, right? So we've highlighted this is going to be highly entrepreneurial, focused on creative thinking. Try to highlight your experiences and how they fit and sort of help position yourself for a role like this.
Okay, great. And then there's one that came in. Any tips for how participants can balance the fellowship with their ongoing studies?
Great question. So maybe I didn't emphasize this enough in talking about the details, but this is a full-time program. So the expectation is that candidates who are selected from the program are available to work full-time through the 3 months of the summer. Generally, the way that we've seen that navigated is for the fellows themselves to have that discussion with their PIs or mentors or advisors, to understand that this is a part of the training for the next steps in their career, and negotiate that step away. And that has worked quite well for the fellows that we've brought around the table. I think that the ability to have that conversation and sort of have that drive for your career path is almost in and of itself a bit of a selective pressure on the types of individuals that we're looking to work with. But it's people who really want to take charge of that next step and have that discussion. I'd highlight that we sort of talk about having sort of MDs as being a really interesting fit. There has been the rare case where the MD has said, I'm going to take this 3 months off, but we understand that that's not always feasible for MDs to do. Those that are able to move mountains will make it happen. But we're really interested in speaking to you, even if you're really interested in entrepreneurship and can't take the summer off and step away, reach out to us, and we're open to thinking creatively about how we can expose you to company creation and working hand in hand with you in other ways. We're pretty creative on that front. Might not be part of the core fellowship cohort, but for example, we've looped individuals in to work part-time over one of the exploration cycles to help assist them on certain elements when it's a good fit.
Okay, thanks, Mike. That's all the questions we have.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you to Stem Cell Network, Kate, John, and all the attendees for supporting sort of getting information out there about the program. Hopefully everyone learned a little bit more about this opportunity. and happy to address additional questions offline if you want to reach out to me via email as well.
Thank you very much, both Michael and Anish. We will be, this webinar has been recorded and we will post it on our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to refer back to the timeline that Michael gave there. And you can also get more details, I believe, through your website as well, Amplitude VC, is it .com?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for a really informative session and the opportunity for people to participate in it. What looks like a great fellowship program. Okay, thank you everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.